Greetings and brachas to all of our viewers. We really appreciate everyone that views and listens to the shiur. Today, the point of departure will be the confrontation between Rachel and Leah. The only time we see in the Torah a confrontation between Rachel and Leah is in this week's section that we'll read on Shabbos in Pashas Vayetze. And before we analyze exactly what this confrontation revolves around, we know that Vayetze Ruven b'mei ketzir chitim v'yim tedudoyim basoda v'yoseh Leah imoy. And Ruven went in the days of the wheat harvest, and he found some beautiful mandrakes in the field, and he brought them unto his mother Leah. The gesture, so far as Reuben was concerned, was one of a very sensitive heart. He was aware that his mother Leah was not the first lady of the house. To a very, very slight degree, she was snua. She was a little bit, unfortunately, not in the same level of being loved as Rachel, and he had tremendous powers of observation, tremendous powers of sensitivities, and he wanted to express that he identifies and sympathizes with his mother's plight, and therefore he brought a gesture to show that he is participating and sharing in her plight, very beautiful mandrakes. He brought them to his mother, obviously, and Rachel happened to oversee this. And I pray, please give me of your son's mandrakes. And all of a sudden, we see a response of Leah that is difficult to understand. By Tomer law, and in a very accusing way, almost condemning, she says, "Amat kachtech es ishi." Is it not enough that you took away my husband? You took away my husband from me, and now you want me to relinquish the mandrakes as well? So this is an accusation, condemnation of Rachel. Rachel does not respond. On the contrary, she apologizes, and in a very apologetic way, she said that she will give a type of compensation for the mandrakes, and her turn to be with Yankov, she will relinquish and give it to Leah, very apologetically, and she really excuses herself. This is what we shall analyze. But before we analyze this esoteric section of the Torah, we should first and foremost like to introduce another section of the Torah, which perhaps will help us shed light on exactly what transpired here and what ultimately will be the great gesture of the Kadosh Baruch Hu insofar as Rachel is concerned. In Pashas Vayechi, Yankov is dying, and he calls Yosef, and also apologizes, excuses himself in the following manner: Ani bevoi mi padon meisolai Rachel beretz Canaan baderech beoid kivras eretz lovo yefroso beek berosham baderech efras he beis lechem. So Rashi explains to us that Yankov Avinu, of course, is asking a big favor from Yosef, and that is that he should bury him in the land of Eretz Yisrael, the land of Canaan. Says Rashi that Yaakov was concerned that perhaps there's some sort of taina, there's some sort of taina that Yosef might have on Yankov as far as the burial of his mother is concerned. After all, he buried her along the way, on the roadside, and apparently in some sort of lonely, almost obscure grave, instead of taking her like Rashi points out, Achnisa la'eretz, and take her into Eretz Yisrael. So he buried her along the roadside, and this roadside was the boundary of Eretz Yisrael. So Rashi said, "V'dati sheyesh b'li b'cholai," and I know that you're upset with me. Aval dalucho shal pi hadibar kivarti hasham, but you should know the reason I buried Rachel Imenu along the roadside. Today, of course, there's a monument that was erected by Kever Rachel, but once upon a time it was an obscure grave because it was very strategic. She should be a help to her children, because after the destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash and the ensuing exile of Klal Yisrael into Bavel, into Babylon, so Yotzes Rachel, they will pass by this spot, all the Jewish people. Yankov Avinu saw Baruch HaKodesh will have to pass by this part of the road on the way to Bavel, and Rachel will rise up from her grave and she will cry and she will beg and implore Rachamim, mercy for her children, like the pasuk says, "Koyel b'chama nishma." There's a koyel that will be heard in this specific place. It's Rachel v'hi b'chi samruchim, with a bitter weeping to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Meyano lehinochem al boneh. She refuses to be consoled for her children that are going into exile, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu responds. We'll soon see exactly what the response was and why HaKadosh Baruch Hu responded. But at this point, we see that Rachel's soul had to intervene on behalf of Klal Yisrael, Daf on the road to Babylon. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, the Gemara in Megillah Daf Yud Gimel assured Rachel that ultimately the children will come back to Eretz Yisrael. There will be a mass return of her children from the exile in Bavel. So this is exactly what Rashi says, and it would appear that Yosef accepted it, and indeed he was consoled. Interestingly is, of course, that Rashi in Yirmiyahu, well, the psukim that we just mentioned a moment ago, so it's very, very interesting that Rashi brings down the Chazal, that the Chazal say the following: She is spalu ha'ovas v'lo niskablo tfilasam, ubo rocha v'toano shehi basa v'dom u'kishechnisu tzarasa lebeisa nichmru rachameh olel v'lo daishe shoska l'shemasu l'simon rachameh HaKadosh Baruch Hu she'em merubim golshken she'yimchol al ma shechnisu tzara lebeisa al zeh ono lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu she'yisocha lepulasa shosoim Leah v'shavu bonim givulam. So Rashi tells us a fascinating Medrash Chazal. A voice was heard on high. That's, of course, Rachel wailing for her children. Rachel weeps for her children. She refuses to be consoled for her children, for they're gone. So Kadosh Baruch Hu says, restrain your voice from weeping, your eyes from tears, because there's going to be a reward for your begging and imploring mercy from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's hope, and ultimately, within 70 years, your children shall return from the enemy's land. And of course, we are stunned, astonished, when we read the Psukim to see that only Rachel, as it were, seems to have cared for Klal Yisrael. But we see that's not true. We see that the Ovis HaKadoshim, that's the Medrash Chazal that Rashi brings down, also implored HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Moshe Rabbeinu implored HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and all the Nevi'im Yitzchak Avinu and Yaakov Avinu as well, all the others, and all the Nevi'im that existed at that time also implored HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we know for a fact, we're not interested in measuring greatness, grandeur, majesty, but we realize that the Avos HaKadoshim, this is in no way a chauvinistic statement, were greater, more outstanding than the Imos. Of course, the Imos, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah were outstanding, great people. Their stature is absolutely a stature of glory and majesty, but the Avos HaKadoshim were on a little higher madrega, and they could not extinguish the fire that HaKadosh Baruch Hu blazed forth. When the wrath of HaKadosh Baruch Hu blazed forth, when Menashe, King Menashe, placed a cross in the Beis HaMikdash, so the wrath of HaKadosh Baruch Hu blazed forth, caused the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash and the exile of the Jewish people. And nothing could extinguish the fire that emanated from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Nevi'im that existed at that time, they also implored HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but to no avail. The Avos came out of their Kvarim also to beg HaKadosh Baruch Hu for mercy for his children. They were rejected. All of their pleas, and they were full-blooded pleas, were rejected. They accomplished great deeds, no question about it. Avraham Avinu by the Akedah accomplished something which no human being could possibly achieve. And the heights that Moshe Rabbeinu reached, he was the one that was the redeemer of the Jewish people from Mitzrayim. He was the one that brought down the Torah from heaven to the Jewish people. 40 days he didn't eat, 40 days he didn't drink, didn't sleep. So we're talking about heroic acts, tremendous heroic acts that were indispensable in the establishment of Klal Yisrael. And yet, each of the Avos, Moshe, the Nevi'im, begged HaKadosh Baruch Hu to redeem the Jewish people. They were unsuccessful, was to no avail. Only Rachel, who weeps on behalf of her children, does HaKadosh Baruch Hu promise redemption to Klal Yisrael. What was the great accomplishment of Rachel? The fact, Rashi says, that she revealed to her sister Leah the Simonim which Rachel and Yaakov had agreed that under the chuppah, the time of the wedding, so Yaakov was apprehensive that perhaps Lavan or Arami would try to deceive him and not give Rachel to Yaakov to marry him. He was afraid of the deceit. Lavan was capable of everything. So she gave over the simonim, the signals which Yaakov gave her to be identified as Rachel at her wedding. For what purpose? The Gemara Megillah says to avoid shaming and embarrassing her sister under the chuppah. So it's a very, very nice gesture of humanity, of softness, of sensitivity, no question about it. But is it so outstanding? Is it so significant? Of course, Rachel's act of compassion toward her unfortunate sister was a very beautiful, sensitive act, but does it carry more weight than the great deeds of Vayetze HaKadoshim? How can we understand why HaKadosh Baruch Hu would hearken to Rachel because of her merit of avoiding her sister's embarrassment and shame, that should outweigh all the great maisim, great actions, heroic actions of the Avos HaKadoshim, the holy forefathers of the Jewish people, and Moshe Rabbeinu. Difficult to understand. What extinguished the fire? What consoled HaKadosh Baruch Hu? One act And of course, the commentators found this very, very difficult. We don't understand it. One of our favorite commentators, of course, is Reb Reuven Grozovsky, Chassan of the Beit Nesiah, the son-in-law of Baruch Ber, also a Rebbe of Reb Aaron Kotler, and he does not try to penetrate into the depth of Chazal and try to understand exactly why HaKadosh Baruch Hu responded to Rachel because of her merit insofar as the Simonim and the Mesiras HaSimonim, the giving over of the signals and the signs to his sister are concerned. He does not try to understand it. He just says that if we analyze it closely, so we see over here probably the most remarkable insight in the entire Torah. Reb Reuven says over here we see, we perceive, we comprehend a klal gadol in the Torah which we cannot see, we cannot perceive, we cannot comprehend anywhere else. To the extent, says Reb Reuven, that this should change our entire outlook on the entire Torah. Because according to our outlook, our hashkafa, so we are under the impression only great heroic action insofar as Torah is concerned, or tefillah, prayer is concerned, or great outstanding mitzvahs, or the love of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or the fear of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So these actions, these heroic and outstanding actions, says Reb Reuven, are the actions which will precipitate miracles, redemption, and corresponding great actions of vis-a-vis Klal Yisrael by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In addition, from our hashkafa, we understand that the great actions of learning Torah, of fulfilling mitzvahs, of reaching dizzying heights of love of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, reverence and awe of the awesome HaKadosh Baruch Hu, will achieve great results insofar as HaKadosh Baruch Hu's behavior and pattern of behavior to Klal Yisrael would only be if this is done continuously, day in, day out, consecutive days and nights of maintaining and even achieving greater and loftier levels of these important avodas, of these important services of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But one isolated act and gesture of compassion by one sister to another to avoid embarrassment, of course, it's praiseworthy, no question about it. It's an act of beautiful humanity. But this should be such an overriding action. So Reb Reuven says, from here we come to the conclusion that on occasion, a very small, insignificant action has greater significance than the Akedah. Even though presumably the Akedah was more of a heroic action of valor, and this is something which is seemingly insignificant, it's private, it's hidden from the public view, but this ranks among the most significant and greatest acts of courage and heroism in the annals of Klal Yisrael. Why? Reb Reuven Grozovsky does not answer. But this is what we come to a normative conclusion, and therefore Reb Reuven Grozovsky said that we have to be extra careful, because now we see the importance of, God forbid, being cruel, being brutal, and shaming somebody, not publicly, even shaming somebody, or if we have the capacity the capabilities. We're in the situation where we can't prevent the embarrassment, the shame of someone else, and we do so. So this is one of the greatest, outstanding acts possible. Difficult to understand, but this is the normative conclusion, the moral conclusion. This is a moral lesson that we learn insofar as the Ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is concerned. At this juncture, let us now try to understand exactly why Rachel's act is so significant, so heroic, within the context of the confrontation between Rachel and Leah. If we analyze the psukim, so we come to the question of Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, Second Side of the Kodesh Levracha, Moron Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshivas Mir Hamtira. Chaim Shmulevitz said that in his entire lifetime, when he was involved in disputes, so he actually saw that there were two sides to every story. That's the way the colloquialism goes. Colloquially, we say there's two sides to every story. However, in the confrontation between Rachel and Leah, Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, Zeichat Tzad of the Kodesh Levracha, Moran Rosh Yeshiva, believed that it was one-sided. There were no two sides in this confrontation. When Leah accused Rachel, not enough that you take away my husband, you also want to take away my son's mandrakes as well? So she could have simply said, how is it that you dare to throw such words of abuse and arrogance in my face? I took away your husband? In order that you should have a husband, I gave a good part of my life away to you. In addition, if I would not have participated in all the dirty tricks of Lavan, so you would have absolutely no possibility of being married to Yaakov Avinu. That which you're in the home of Yaakov Avinu is only because I gave you away my place. We were supposed to be married. Yaakov Avinu wanted to marry me, and Lavan agreed to it. And that's the way the invitation read. The wedding is supposed to be between Yaakov and Rachel. In order to avoid embarrassing you, shaming you, so what did I do? I gave away my place to you. And ipso facto, I gave away a good part of my life. Why? Because the Ramban told us, why was it necessary for Rachel to die exactly when they came into Eretz Yisrael? But Kivras Haaretz, Derech Beis Lechem. So the Ramban says his famous Yesoid, that in Chutz La'aretz, in the diaspora, it was mutter, it was permitted for Yaakov Avinu to marry two sisters. In the Torah, we know you cannot marry two sisters. So how could Yaakov Avinu, so to speak, transgress a prohibition of the Torah? So the Ramban says in Chutz La'aretz, there was no kepeda. Yaakov Avinu did not have to be meticulous insofar as the Surei Torah are concerned. If there was a benefit for Klal Yisrael, for building up a Jewish nation, so it was mutter. When did Yaakov have to be careful, meticulous in the performance of the mitzvahs HaTorah? Came into Eretz Yisrael. So Rachel said to Leah, if things would have gone according to the natural order, so even if Yaakov would have married you, theoretically, after he married me, but I would be the first sister that Yaakov married. And then afterwards, he would marry you. So the Eser, the Neseres, is Leah. She becomes the object that was prohibited to be married. A person can marry one of two sisters. What's the prohibition? Not to marry the second sister. So she, as it were, would be the vehicle for the prohibition. And what is the chiyuv? What is the oynesh? What is the punishment? Kares. Misa, death. So now things going to go into a natural order. And Rachel would have been the first one of the sisters to get married, and Leah will be the second. She'd be the Neseres. She would be the one that's forbidden. So when they came to Eretz Yisrael, she would have to die. If Leah would be the first of the sisters to be married, and Rachel would be the second, so she would have to die when they entered Eretz Yisrael. And she did. And the Ramban says the Moyas were Nevios. They were prophetesses. She was a prophetess. And she knew it. So she willingly, heroically, courageously gave up her life, a good part of her life, for her sister. Unbelievable. And this is what Leah says. So she could have said that, but Chaim Shmulevitz said. But Chaim Shmulevitz said she had a taina that no one had. It was a one-sided story. So why did she not forward that taina? Why did she not rebuke Leah and say, how dare you speak so arrogantly in my face? How dare you throw such words of condemnation to me? So Chaim Shmulevitz said, the reason she was apologetic and the reason she was willing to absorb words of abuse for one simple reason. Because it was so natural for her to give over this imanim. It was so natural for her to give away a good part of her life to avoid embarrassment of her sister, that she did not feel she did anything. To the extent that she did not even wait for a thank you, because she didn't think she deserves a thank you, because she didn't do anything, because Leah didn't take her place and she did not give her place. All of that approach, those type of thoughts never entered her mind. She was the same Rachel after she gave the simonim to her sister as she was beforehand. She felt she accomplished absolutely nothing. What did HaKadosh Baruch Hu wait from Rachel Imenu? That she should indeed technically give her place to her sister, but without a feeling that she gave away anything and she relinquished something which was hers. This is a tremendous pnimius madriga for Rachel to achieve. Reb Chaim Shmulevitz used to say that's shleimus hamaisa. She did it with such great trepidation. We don't understand it because the Chazal tell us that the koil, the voice, that night of the wedding was the voice of Rachel. We don't understand how she achieved that. But it's immaterial. She took no chance whatsoever. And she did heroic actions that are beyond our comprehension. Like the Chazal say, was a Kol Kol Rachel. It was her voice. To avoid a type of embarrassment and shame to her sister. So far as Shleimus HaMaaseh, the perfection of an attribute of Ben Adam Lechaveroi. So Rachel achieved the pinnacle any person can achieve. And that is why what Chaim Shmulevitz said is great Yisoid. Right afterwards, it says, Vayiskar the Kimes Rachel. Says Rashi, what did the Kadosh Baruch Hu remember that Rachel achieved, that she did, in order that she should now merit to have a son, Yosef? She needed a merit to have her first son, Yosef. What was her merit? So Rashi says the Kadosh Baruch Hu remembered Vayiskar the Kimes Rachel, Shemosras HaSimonim, that she gave over the Simonim to her sister. And everyone asked, Makshim Oilo. Everyone asked, now HaKadosh Baruch Hu remembers it. And this is going to precipitate the merit she needs to have a child, Yosef. Although this took place many, 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 many years ago. So we would think that the juxtaposition between that merit of giving over the Simanim and having a child, that link should have taken place 10, 12 years ago. Why now? So Chaim Shmulevitz said, if you really want to know when was the genuine Mesiras HaSimonim, it was now when Rachel Imeinu demonstrated beyond any doubt that there was absolutely no Mesira. She did absolutely nothing. Leah did not take and Rachel did not give. At this point in time, we have the true relinquishing and giving over of the Simonim when Rachel said Rachel showed beyond any doubt, demonstrated, displayed, there was actually no Mesiras HaSimonim. She didn't feel she did anything. Absolutely nothing. So these are madregas that a Kadosh Baruch Hu waits us, from all of us, and we have opportunities. We're involved in interpersonal relationships all the time. And with this beautiful Yesod of Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, we should be more aware and more alert that we can be Zeicha, we can merit Yoinim through being meticulous and avoiding at all costs embarrassing somebody and doing whatever we can to help somebody, prevent somebody from being an object of shame and embarrassment.